Hey, welcome to the channel. My name is Jason. Here I talk about all things story. And the story I am talking about today is the novel The Churchgoer by Patrick Coleman. This novel came out in 2019, and you may be asking yourself, well, why did it take you so long to discover it? Not that 2 or 3 years is very long, but anyway, there's a little bit of a backstory. So I watched one of my favorite shows of all time again for the second time recently. That is True Detective, Season 1, mind you. Season 1, yeah. Season 2 was something else. Season 3 was all right, but Season 1 just holds a special place in my heart. So I was curious, what is Nick Pizzolatto up to? What's going on? I haven't heard from the guy in a while, as if he's a good buddy of mine. But anyway, I looked him up and I realized that he's adapting The Churchgoer, this novel, into a series for FX. And the other cool part is Matthew McConaughey is starring. So they are joining forces again for another noir story. And if I didn't mention that, this is a noir story. It is not a story about a man who goes to church. He used to go to church, used to be a pastor. But on that note, let me talk about the hook. What is this novel about? This novel is about a man named Mark Haynes. He is an ex-pastor. He's estranged from his wife and his child. He has a grandson he's never seen. And he works security. He's kind of, his life is in tatters, so to speak, but he enjoys it to the best of his ability. He surfs a lot. Oh, the story takes place in California, which is actually like a really big part of this novel. I like to, I don't really talk about setting a whole lot, but it really is an important aspect of this novel, and it's written in such a colorful way. I mean, the author himself being from this region speaks volumes as to why the setting is so great. Mark Haynes, he stumbles into this young woman. She appears homeless. She's most likely homeless. They start a brief relationship, not that kind of more like the fatherly kind. I feel like this woman is somewhat of a proxy to his lost family, or specifically his lost daughter, and she goes missing. And so Mark Haynes, the good guy he is, decides to take it upon himself and search for this missing girl. And that just kind of is the impetus of this plot to unravel into something much larger than that of a missing girl. So what did I think? Well, first, let us begin with character. So this novel is written in first person. It is through the sole perspective of Mark Haynes. And needless to say, we get deep inside of his head, his psyche. We learn all of his traumas, which I think are paramount to a character that you're going to empathize with. And I feel like for the most part that works here. I did empathize with him. I felt like, though, that the aspects of his missing daughter and his estranged family, it didn't really hit me close to home as I would have hoped. Like, it didn't, even though it's in there, maybe the author could have spent a little bit more time dwelling on that, having some kind of reminders of it. You know, again, though, it's a tough balancing act, I know. But for whatever reason, I didn't feel, I think, as deeply as I have for some other characters that I've read in novels. But still, he's a cool guy. He's fun to read. It's a great reading experience. So if you've never read noir, you are in for a treat, because I laughed out loud numerous times in this book. And this book, while I think it has a great balance of levity and darkness, with any kind of noir fiction, you want it to be dark, you want it to be gritty, and you will get that here. That is definitely something that happens. It's highly emotional, from all kinds of sides of the emotional spectrum, I guess. So yeah, Mark Haynes, he's a funny dude. I think that sometimes the writing was a little bit too heavy, and in heavy I mean a little bit too clever for its own good. And that could just be my misreading on it. You do get an understanding that Mark is a very educated man, particularly in religion, because he used to be a pastor. There's a lot of other just very, very clever, quippy things he says that kind of dampen the flow a little bit for me. It's hard to explain. I don't want to say that this is like a bad thing in this novel whatsoever. It did make it fun to read. Like I said, there was plenty of times where I laughed out loud, which is just the mark of a great writer and a great characterization artist. I don't know, maybe that's a weird way of saying that, but interesting to read the character. Cindy Lou, who is the missing girl, at least that's her name when we meet her. I don't want to spoil anything else, but she is a firecracker herself, and so they tend to work off each other in the scenes that they're in. They're not in a ton of scenes in this book, but together, I should add. But the ones they are very entertaining to read. Let's put it that way. And I feel like all the other character work is very solid. Like I said, we spend most of our times with Mark Haynes. There's obviously secondary characters. There's, I guess a quote unquote villain in a way. It's just an antagonist from all different sides, and I think that's what lends itself to be an interesting tale in this regard, because rarely in life is there one antagonist. We usually are hit from all angles, and Mark is essentially caught in the middle of multiple points of resistance. So all of them very, very well fleshed out, very interesting to read. And I think that's really one of my favorite things about this novel, is that everyone is so colorful, everyone is so well defined in this book that you can vividly picture them. Just some of the character descriptions here are just fantastic. They're amazing work. I can't talk enough about how awesome the writing is, but I'll get to that in a bit. So secondarily, the plot. What is the plot? Well, it's one of the things that kind of, at first, it felt like a shortcoming to me, and then it became a very powerful turning point for myself. I think once I got to the very end, in fact, it was the very last chapter that really turned me around. I mean, I still love the novel, but it really kind of elevated it to that next level for me personally. But yeah, so we have Mark. He's searching for this girl. She goes missing. Or actually, these events kind of lead him to individuals he knew in the past who have changed their path much as he has. And so the plot itself isn't complex, and I think that's okay, because this is, again, it's a very character-driven novel. The plot is just kind of set dressing. To me, it's a means for us to explore this character and have him reconcile his past and how the present affects that, and see him grow as a person. And so while the plot is very ordinary, I think that really is its strength here, because I'm really trying not to spoil it, but it explores themes of how sometimes we get in our own head too much. Sometimes we think things are bigger than they appear to be. And that kind of puts us in an awkward position where we are overreaching. We're stretching beyond what we should. We're seeing things through a distorted lens, let's say. And I played with this a lot in my first novel, The Field, and even in the latest novel I came out with, A Song for the End of the World. In that, I've always been fascinated by perception, how we perceive the world, how we perceive events, how we ascribe meaning to those things that really may or may not be there. And I don't mean so much in a nihilistic standpoint, but it just shows it's more of a reflection of who we are, and our misunderstandings and our observations. And I just love that idea. And that's really what turned me around in this novel. Again, like I said, I enjoyed the whole thing, but that really, it did elevate it, that last chapter, which hopefully you make it to, because I think this is definitely a book you should read. Oh, one thing I forgot to talk about, I wanted to talk about character, or in the character section, is the setting itself. So it takes place in San Diego, California. And if you are a writer, you will know that setting itself should be a character, right? It should be a character all in itself. And I think that's one aspect of novels that a lot of writers forget, myself included. My first novel, like I said, was kind of based on my hometown when I grew up. It's a fictionalized version of that town, however, but because I was so intimately familiar with just the intricacies of day-to-day life, just the qualities of the weather, of the way the sidewalks look, of the way the people are, all of those things, that setting brings the novel to life so much. And because the author lives in this region, this setting is just brimming with detail. I mean, it completely comes alive, and that is one of the major strengths of this novel. Is I'm from California myself, so while I've never lived in San Diego, I've been there a few times. And if you live in California, all of the little details he puts in there, you'll get a lot out of it. And if you don't live in California, you've never been to California, just know that they're very, very accurate. It will give you a taste of what California is like, at least Southern California. So let's talk about the writing itself, or as I like to call it, the cinematography of the novel. Again, Patrick Coleman, he's a great writer. He's really amazed me in his level of skill. The similes he comes up with, the metaphors he comes up with, like I said, laughing out loud plenty of times. I was just, I had to pause and reread some things a couple times, because I was just transfixed by his skill with the written word. And it's one of those things that, while amazing, I feel like we're somewhat of the detriment to the novel. And I know that sounds very contradictory, but let me explain. So sometimes, because this novel is written in the first person from Mark Haynes' perspective, we have to understand that every observation is coming out of his head, right? It's not an omniscient POV where we can kind of get sort of this like godlike voice maybe that is sort of having a commentary on what's going on. No, everything in here is from this man's POV. So it reflects his education, it reflects his experiences, and everything that is he's just sort of absorbed throughout his life is coming out on the page in his thoughts and his language. And sometimes it felt just a little clever for its own good. Now, I don't want to really knock it a whole lot because I did enjoy reading those passages, but I think coming from a writer's standpoint, sometimes you have to hold back because a lot of times you have an intimate knowledge in certain aspects of life, and you want to try to hold those back because you want, unless your character reflects someone like you, because you want to make sure that it is the character speaking on the page, not the writer, right? Because we want to make sure that, well, I don't think we can ever get away from this, right? Like every character I've written and every character every writer's written, there's something of them in that person. But here I felt like maybe some of the writing was a little bit, a little bit ham-fisted, a little bit on the nose. And I don't know if that was intentional because, again, this is noir. I don't know if Patrick Coleman was having a fun time and just is trying to, not take himself too seriously, because there's a lot of serious stuff in this novel. And so it is definitely a mix of that, where you have these kind of deeply emotional, introspective moments, but then you also have these kind of laugh out loud moments, which really offer a great balance. But I know I'm kind of getting off topic. So that'd be my one criticism, I think, of this novel, is that sometimes the writing just felt like a little bit too much from the POV of this character, like almost like he was this just amazingly well-read man, which he was from the perspective of religion, right? He was a pastor. He's very knowledgeable and all of that stuff. And it makes me wonder, I should have done some research on the writer, but if he had a background in religion, or, grew up in a very, very Bible thumping kind of household, I don't know, but his knowledge here was exemplary. I thoroughly enjoyed it. But yeah, this is a great one to learn a lot from if you are a writer. If you're just a reader, I feel like the words will be very pleasant, they will flow, have a great flow. You will not get hung up on the construction of this novel. So finally, the score. I don't know, should I keep doing scores? Let me know in the comments. I'm not sure how I feel about scores. Sometimes I've been watching a lot of BookTube lately, and I notice a lot of BookTubers don't give a score. They just kind of talk about it, recommend it, don't recommend it, and that's it. But if you like the scores, let me know. I will keep them coming if that is useful to you. But what I'm going to do is give The Churchgoer by Patrick Coleman an 8 out of 10. Great characterization, an immensely fun novel to read. For me in particular, like I said, moments of levity mixed with deep emotional construction lends itself to a very enjoyable read. The plot itself, while you kind of think you want it to get bigger than it is, it's all about perception and how we maybe sometimes take things a little bit too far, let's say. And so I really appreciate that aspect of this novel, in that I was kind of disappointed because, you get toward the end of it, very close to the end of it, and you're like, oh, that's it. And then that last chapter kind of hits you, or the last couple chapters really hit you, make you think about what the author's trying to say and how sometimes things just may not be what you think they are. So should you read it? Yes, I think this is a great novel for anybody, really. There's nothing gratuitous about it. It's a great story that charters a journey of a man who has lost his family and his just kind of coping with that. I forgot to mention he's a middle-aged man too, so he's in his twilight years, or well, maybe not that far, but rebuilding a life, would be tough for him. And I think that really speaks volumes about what this novel is trying to say. So yeah, definitely a good one. Pick it up. Highly recommend it. So that's it for me. I hope you enjoyed the review. And if you'd like to support the channel, give me a like, subscribe for story-related content. And if you want to check out some of my own work, my latest novel, A Song for the End of the World, is a post-apocalyptic story of bleak proportions. Book 1 in a trilogy. So if you want to check out my stuff, check it out. There it is. Also, I do my Worth 1,000 Words series where I write a 1,000 word short story on the spot based on inspired by a piece of artwork every week. It's just a fun little exercise for me to kind of stretch my writing muscles. And if you're a writer, you may get something out of it because I kind of analyze my thought processes. And trust me, the last few have been kind of weak. But I think it's important to show that the failings, right? I think it's important to show that because that's just part of the process, right? And if you're a reader and you just like to see sort of behind the curtain of what storytelling is like, you might get something out of it too. And I'm really thinking about just taking the story and stripping it away from the long form video and just uploading those as separate pieces too, for those of you who don't really care so much about the analysis. So if that's something you'd be interested in, if you just want to like consume these stories that I create, let me know in the comments, not comics. But anyway, thank you for hanging out with me, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.